The Constitutional Court will this morning hand down its judgment on the IEC's appeal on former President Jacob Zuma's candidacy. The Apex Court heard arguments earlier this month on the correct interpretation of the Constitution, which governs who qualifies for membership of the National Assembly. Watching developments is SABC News reporter Canny Maphanga, who joins us now live for a sense of what to expect. And Canny, we're expecting the Constitutional Court to speak on a number of important legal matters, including whether or not the IEC overstepped, quite frankly, when it barred former President Jacob Zuma from contesting the polls.
Well, good morning to you, Ayanda, and to the viewers at home. Indeed, today is the day for the former president and now leader of the MK party to find out whether he qualifies to be a member of the National Assembly in terms of Section 47, subsection 1E. Remember, Ayanda, we are dealing with a rare instance when we speak of the former president, because he was convicted and sentenced in the Constitutional Court for contempt of court, and he received that 15-month sentence. Of course, because of the design of South Africa's judiciary, when he was sentenced and convicted here, it meant that he had nowhere else to go to appeal that matter. That is the grounds upon which he challenged his disqualification. That is the March IEC decision to disqualify him after it received a number of objections to his candidature due to the fact that he was sentenced to 15 months. And we know that Section 47 speaks of very serious offences, meaning that if you have been sentenced to 12 months or more without the option of a fine, then you're disqualified from being a member of the National Assembly, and that disqualification exists for 5 years after you've completed that sentence. So we can expect this morning at 10 a.m. that the Constitutional Court is going to address a number of issues in that electoral court order that the IEC is appealing, that essentially upheld Zuma's challenge of his disqualification based on the fact that, one, he wasn't able to appeal his sentence, and drafters of the Constitution realized that that right exists in the Constitution when you convict and sentence an individual. Then, of course, there's the issue of the question of bias. Even though the electoral courts didn't determine that matter because it didn't have enough evidence, it's quite critical to the former president's argument, stating that the decision of the IEC was null and void because they argue that it was tainted by the participation of the IEC Commissioner Janet Love when she participated in that decision, knowing that she had commented on the general issue of Section 47 after being asked a question about Zuma's eligibility in January. Then, of course, we expect them to also deal with this question of recusal. We know that they denied that application by the former president, but they didn't provide reasons at the time when we heard the hearing on the 10th of May. We expect that those reasons will be provided at least first in the main judgment when it is handed down at 10 a.m. this morning, when they go through all those various issues, which will bring us to finality to the question of Section 47, subsection 1E. It's also important for the current elections and future elections to come, because it ran the risk of hindering those elections or affecting the outcome or producing a disputed outcome if the matter was not resolved before the 29th of May.
Absolutely. Important also to emphasize a point already made by the IEC multiple times. No matter how the Constitutional Court decides today, the former president's name, his face, will still be on the ballot paper come the 29th of May.
Absolutely, and what we're discussing today is his qualification, rather, to be a member of the National Assembly, not whether he is the leader or the face of the MK party on the ballot. We know that voting has begun, at least abroad, and will be heading to the polls from at least the 27th with that special vote, and then, of course, the official election date is the 29th of May. So what people will still see, no matter what the outcome is today, is that the former president will still be on the ballot. He'll be the face of the MK party as its leader. That is something that the IEC has stressed. The only thing that could affect the former president through this outcome today, if it is an adverse outcome for him, is that he cannot be a member of the National Assembly. We know that the former president has made comments before about how he has unfinished business, and that is why he is contesting, and that is his candidature reason. However, we know that the Constitution as it stands doesn't allow him to serve another term as president. He has completed 2 terms as the president of South Africa. We know that he left a second term a bit early to that termination date. However, that term was completed. So I think the former president is well aware of this fact, and the Constitution lets us know that this fact exists, that he cannot serve another term. The only issue at play here is whether or not he can be a member of the National Assembly. But as you've correctly stated, Ayanda, we've done a fair amount of talking about the MK party since the former president endorsed it on the 16th of December. They've been in 3 high-profile matters that have given them extensive coverage and publicity leading up to the mayor polls. So one can be led to the conclusion, rather, that this outcome is not going to have a massive or significant impact on the MK party, as they have survived a court challenge for their deregistration. They've also survived a court challenge on the trademark, which would have meant that they would have had to rebrand ahead of the elections. The former president survived in the electoral court his disqualification, and now we're in the ConCourt to hear the finality of this issue. So I don't think it's going to have much of an effect on their performance in the elections, but rather just spells out clearly, when you get a rare instance like that of the former president, where someone has been convicted and sentenced in the apex court, what is the correct interpretation of Section 47, subsection 1E?
Yeah, a number of moving parts. Very quickly, Canny, of course, we also know that the founder of the MK party is contesting the president of the same organization. In fact, he deposed an affidavit in this particular matter. I wonder to what extent the Constitutional Court will entertain any of that in a context where the IEC has said, as far as we're concerned, the former president is the current leader of the organization.
Well, with the context with the founder of the MK party, that is Jabulani Khumalo, he did in fact write to the IEC to spell out his position on the MK party. He then attempted to enter this court battle on the 10th of May without a notice of motion. So of course the Constitutional Court did not entertain how he wanted to spell out the MK party and the fact that it would abide by whatever decision the IEC, or rather the ConCourt, decided with respect to the IEC's appeal. But we know just days ahead of the elections, he has now turned to the specialist courts to get that order, or rather get an urgent application and seeking an order in which he is recognized as the order of the MK, or leader rather of the MK party, instead of the former President Jacob Zuma. We know in papers that he filed before the specialist courts that he's seeking a hearing tomorrow. We haven't seen anything from the electoral courts stating any notice of set down, but we do know that the MK party will vehemently oppose this application, which has been brought before the specialist court just 9 days before we expected to head to the polls, and while voting abroad has already begun. So we know that the voting abroad took place with the former president's face on the ballot representing the MK party. So I'm not sure how much of a fruitful exercise Mr. Jabulani Khumalo will have in the electoral courts pursuing this application just 9 days before the elections.
Yeah, in other words, it feels like the horse has already bolted, but we'll allow the electoral court to deal with all of that. For now, Canny Maphanga, thanks very much indeed. An important moment for the constitution, dare I say, of the country, given, of course, the potential implications that whatever the Constitutional Court finds actually has. So as soon as that judgment is handed down at around 10 o'clock, catch it first here on the SABC News Channel.